All right, so we've been talking about inequalities, and so far we've just been doing adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing inequalities. We're now going to look at solving two-step inequalities. This is going to feel very similar to when we talked about equations, because this is going to be just about the exact same thing. So let's just start looking at some examples. So letter A says you want to find the values of x so that the area of the rectangle is more than 22 square units. So I'm looking at area. I know that I need to find area. Well, we're off to a good start. All right, area I know is length times width, right? So my length and width I'm going to have 4 times x plus 3, and it needs to be more than 22, so greater than 22. Now, we know how to solve if this was an equal sign, right? We would know how to do that. We're going to distribute first, so we're going to do the same thing here. So now I've got 4x plus 12 needs to be greater than 22. I'll subtract 12 from both sides, and I've got 4x is greater than 10. I'll divide both sides by 4. I get that x is greater than 5 halves. Okay, we're just doing the same exact stuff that we've done before, right? I distribute. I combine like terms if I need to. I get my variable by itself. And so I do inverse operations in order to get that, right? So let's look at part B. We're going to write and solve an inequality that says that the perimeter of the rectangle needs to be at least 28 units. So perimeter means that I'm going to look at the distance around. So I need to add up all of my sides. So I'm going to write it like this, and then I'm going to explain why. So I'm going to have 2 times x plus 3 plus 2 times 4. And then at least means that the smallest number it can be is 28. So this needs to be greater than or equal to 28. Now, I wrote it with the times 2, right? Because if I look at my rectangle, I'm adding up the sides. I know that with a rectangle, opposite sides are the same, right? So this side is x plus 3, which means that this side is also x plus 3. This side is 4, which means that that side is also 4. So then I just multiplied them by 2, so then I have just less steps. So now I'm going to distribute. 2 times x is 2x, 2 times 3 is 6, and then 2 times 4 is 8, is greater than or equal to 28. I'll combine my like terms, so I'll combine 6 plus 8, which is 14. So now I have 2x plus 14 is greater than or equal to 28. Get rid of my 14, so I'll subtract 14 from both sides. Now I have 2x is greater than or equal to 14. I'll divide both sides by 2 to undo that. X is greater than or equal to 7. Okay, so we have some steps. And these are steps that we are used to seeing. These are very similar things to what we were talking about when we were talking about equations. So my first step is to distribute if I can. Distribute if needed. After I've distributed, then I can combine my like terms. Okay, after combining like terms, I'm going to undo addition and subtraction. And then after I've done that, I'm going to undo my multiplication and division. Multiplication. There is an extra thing that I need to remember when I'm dealing with inequalities. And the extra thing that I need to remember is that when I multiply or divide, by a negative number, I need to flip my sign. I flip my inequality. Right? When I multiply or divide by a negative number, I need to flip my inequality sign. All right, let's do some practice here. So I want the value of x, so that the volume of the rectangular prism is no more than 36 cubic inches. So volume is going to be length times width times height. I'm going to try to recalibrate this here quick. Okay, hopefully this is better. All right, length times width times height. So I've got 4, 2.1, 4.5. So I'm going to take 4 times 4.5 times 2x plus 1. And I want it to be no more than 36 inches. So this needs to be less than or equal to 36 inches. Now I'm just going to multiply. So I'm going to take 4 times 4.5, which I think is 18, but I'm going to double check. Yep, so I'm going to have 18 times 2x plus 1 needs to be less than or equal to 36. Now I'm going to distribute. So I'm going to have 18 times 2 is 36. So I'll have 36x plus 18 is going to be less than or equal to 36. I'll subtract 18 from both sides. Now I'm going to have 36x 36x is less than or equal to 18. I'll divide both sides by 36. I'm left with x needs to be less than or equal to 1/2. 18 over 36 is 1/2. Okay? Let's do some practice problems. We'll do a couple of these together, and you'll do the couple on your own. So let's look at number 2. So number 2, I see that I have negative 4x minus 7 is less than or equal to 9. So step number 1 is I want to get rid of my 7, right? I don't have anything to distribute, so I need to undo my addition and subtraction first. So I'll add 7 to both sides. Now I have negative 4x is less than or equal to 9 plus 7 is 16. Okay? Now I'm going to undo my multiplication and division. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 4. I have divided by a negative number, so my sign needs to flip. So now I'm going to have x is greater than or equal to negative 4. Okay? I'm going to put negative 4 on my graph down here. It's going to be a closed dot at negative 4 because I'm including it. X is greater than or equal to negative 4, so it's going to go to the right. Let's look at 4. Let's just do the evens together, I guess, and then you can do the odds on your own. Okay, this one is tricky because we've got fractions, right? So again, my first step is I'm doing my addition and subtraction. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides. So I'm going to have negative 2y, and then I'm going to have 5 over 2 plus 5. So this would be the same thing as 5 is 10 over 2, right? So I could take 5 over 2 plus 10 over 2. It's going to be 15 halves. So 2y is going to be greater than 15 over 2. Divide by negative 2. Divide by negative 2, but if I'm dealing with fractions, I can divide by negative 2 or I can multiply by the reciprocal. So I would have negative 2 over 1. If I flip this around, it's the same thing as multiplying by 1/2. So I'm going to multiply this by negative 1/2. Then just multiply across. I'm going to have negative 15 over 4. And so then my solution here is going to be y is, I need to flip my sign. So y is less than, let's see what negative 15 over 4 is if I divide it out. 15 divided by 4, it's going to be negative, I'm going to write negative 15 over 4 because that's the proper answer. But that's going to be negative 3.75. So let's find, we'll just do negative 15/4 right down here. This one's going to be a closed dot because I'm not including negative 15/4. And it's less than, so my arrow is going to be pointing to the left. Alright, let's do one more here. My first step here, right, is I'm going to distribute. So I'm going to distribute my 6 to both terms. So here we go. Whoops, let's get that back to normal. Ooh, come on. Okay. So I'm going to have negative 6 still here. Hope that's not quite. Let me fix it so it's a little easier to see. Okay. So I'm going to distribute. So I still have negative 6 on my left-hand side. I want that to be higher. Negative 6 is greater than or equal to. Now I'm going to distribute. So I'm going to have negative 6y. And then I would have minus a negative. 6 times negative 3 is 18. So minus a negative 18, which is the same thing as adding 18. Okay. Now I want to get y by itself, so I'll subtract 18 from both sides. Negative 6 minus 18 is going to be negative 24 is greater than or equal to negative 6y. Divide both sides by negative 6. I'm running out of space. I divided by a negative, so I'm going to have to flip my sign. So negative 24 divided by negative 6 is going to be a positive 4. Flip my sign is less than or equal to y. Now, this is where it might get a little bit tricky because I had to flip my sign because I divided by a negative number, right? But now my variable's on the right-hand side and I'm used to it being on the left-hand side. So I can leave it like this, but we just need to remember where the bigger number is, right? So the opening of my inequality is going to open towards the bigger number. So y, in this case, is bigger than 4. So I could rewrite this as y is greater than or equal to 4. And the reason why we need to pay attention to that, right, is that if I were to, oops, that's not what I wanted. I want the eraser. Just want to get rid of this stuff up here so that we can look at the graph. Okay, so if I graphed this first 4 is less than or equal to y, right? So I know that it's going to be a filled in dot. A lot of students would want to look at this and say, well, it's less than, so this is going to go this direction, right? But that's not true. That's not what we want. This is no good, right? Because y is actually greater than or equal to 4. So we would want to point it to the left, but that's not what our inequality is saying. Our inequality is saying is that y is greater than or equal to 4. So I need my arrow to go the other direction. Okay, so just pay attention to that. Okay. I want you to try the word problem on your own. Let's see what else we got here. All right, so now we're gonna have some practice. Let's do this one together, and then I'll have you do the rest on your own. So I've got 2k plus 1/3 is greater than 1. So if I want to get k by itself, I'm going to first need to subtract 1/3 from both sides. How could I rewrite 1 as a number over 3? Well, I know that 3 divided by 3 is 1, so I could take 3 divided by 3 minus 1 divided by 3 is just going to be 2/3. So now I have 2k is greater than 2/3. To get k by itself, I need to divide both sides by 2. If I divide this by 2, it's the same thing as multiplying by 1/2, right? These cancel. So then I'm going to have that k is greater than 1/3. Okay? I'm going to have you do the other 3 on your own. Let's look at this word problem together. You're renting a moped for the day. There's a daily fee of $20 and a charge of 75 cents for every mile. Your budget allows for a maximum total of $65. So we're going to write and solve an inequality that represents the number of miles that I can rent the moped for. All right, so I'm going to pay $20 no matter what. It has a rental fee of $20. But then I'm also going to pay for every mile that I put on the moped. So I'm going to add to that a charge of 75 cents for every mile that I go. My budget allows for a maximum of $65. So that means that this total, when I add this all up together, needs to be less than or equal to 65. It can't be any more than 65. And that's it. Now I'm going to solve. So we need to undo my multiplication, or I need to undo my addition or subtraction first. So I'm going to subtract 20 from both sides. Right? Then I'm going to have 0.75 is less than or equal to 45. Oops, m. Forgot my m. So then, I wonder if I can drag this over. Let's try to, we'll drag that over, that over, that over, that over. All right. M. Great. Okay, so now I'm going to divide both sides by 0.75. And I need my calculator for this. I think I remember what it is, but I don't for sure. So I'm going to take 45 divided by 3/4 is 60. So I know that my miles needs to be less than or equal to 60. I can go at most 60 miles for the day to stay in my budget. All right, some more practice down here. Let's do this one together, and then I'll have you do the rest on your own. So my first step is to distribute to both places. So I'm going to have -3/2 f. Now I need to take -3/2 times 6. So I'm just going to multiply across. -3 times 6 is -18. 2 times 1 is 2. -18 divided by 2 is -9. So I'm going to have -3/2 f minus 9 needs to be less than or equal to -6. Next, I need to undo my addition and subtraction. So I'm going to add 9 to both sides. Now I'm left with -3/2 f is less than or equal to -6 plus 9 is a +3. Now, I need to divide both sides by -3/2. But I know that if I'm dividing fractions, I need to divide this by -3/2. I can just multiply by its reciprocal. So now, I'm just going to move this over here. Let's see, we've got 3/1 times, the reciprocal of 3/2 is going to be times -2/3. These are going to cancel. I've just got -2. So, I'm going to have f, I divided by a negative, so my sign needs to flip, is greater than or equal to -2. Okay, I'm going to have you do the other 3 on your own. I think I have a little bit more back here. Yeah, we're going to do these together. So we're going to write and solve an inequality that represents the values of x, for which the area is going to be at most 45 square meters. So if we remember, area is length times width, right? So I'm going to take 4.5 times x plus 3, and that needs to be at most 45 square meters, so it's going to be almost less than or equal to 45. Distribute first, so I'm going to have 4.5 x, and then 4.5 times 3 is going to be 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 and a half is less than or equal to 45. Then I'll undo my addition and subtraction, so I'm going to subtract 13.5 from both sides. I'm going to pull out my calculator for this one. 45 minus 13.5. So I'm going to have 4.5x needs to be less than or equal to 31 and a half. Now I'm just going to divide both sides by 4.5. I'm going to take that, divided by 4.5 is 7. So x needs to be less than or equal to 7. Alright, last one here. This one's kind of long, so. An animal shelter has a fixed weekly expenses of $750. Each animal in the shelter costs an additional $6 per week. During the summer months, the weekly expenses are at least $1,170. We're going to write and solve an inequality that represents the number of animals at the shelter. Okay. So I'm going to pay $750 no matter what. And I need to add to that $6 for every animal that I have in my shelter. I know that it's going to be at least $1,170, so this is going to be greater than or equal to $1,170. Okay, now I just solve, right? So I'm going to subtract 750 from both sides. 1,170 minus 750. I'm going to have 6a is greater than or equal to 420. Now I just need to divide both sides by 6. A needs to be greater than or equal to 70. 420 divided by 6 is 70. So I need to have at least 70 animals in the shelter for it to cost $1,170 per month. Okay, let's look at the next one. During the winter months, the weekly expenses are at most $900. So we're going to write and solve an inequality that represents the number of animals at the shelter for the expenses to be at most $900 per week. So this equation doesn't change except for how much money I'm spending. So I'm still spending $750 a month. It's still $6 per animal. But now it's at most $900. So this needs to be less than or equal to $900. So now I'm going to do the same steps. Subtract 750 from both sides. Then I'm left with 6a is less than or equal to 150. I'll divide both sides by 6. I'm left with a needs to be less than or equal to 25. I can have at most 25 animals in the shelter to spend no more than $900 per month. Oh, per week. Sorry. Okay. Last one. The cost of each animal has increased by $2. What will be the maximum weekly expenses during the winter months? So, originally, I spent $6 every month for each animal. Now I'm going to spend $2 more than that. So it's going to increase by $2. So I'm still going to have $750 of expenses. Okay, I'm still going to have $750 of expenses. But now it's gonna be $2 more per animal, so I'm gonna spend $8 per animal. And I know that in the winter months, normally I could have at most 25 animals. So I'm gonna plug in 25 here and see what my maximum number is going to be. So now I'm gonna have 750 plus 8 times 25, which I think is 200. Yep, plus 200. 750 plus 200 equals $950. So in the winter months, if they increased by $2 per animal, if my cost increased $2 per animal, I would spend $950 every week instead of $900. All right, go ahead and finish that up on your own, and that is all for 4.4.